I'll do it when they get back.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's City Council meeting for March 3rd, 2014. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Ford,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bullock,
Here.
your light, please, sir.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Amador,
Present.
Councilman Teeter,
Here.
Councilwoman Carson,
Present.
Councilman Benson,
Here.
Councilman McEldowney,
Here.
Councilwoman Elliott,
Present.
Councilman Douglas.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Again, welcome. I'm sorry, but looks like the first item on the agenda, which I normally don't like to do, is to have an executive session. But because of some pressing issues, I'm going to go to the council and ask for a motion to go into executive session to take care of some items, and they'll spell that out in their motion. Mr. Bullock?
Move to go to executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses E, for the purpose of instructing negotiators concerning the master development agreement with Kroenke Sports Enterprise.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session for the purposes stated. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion is carried, and we will be in executive session. Hopefully, won't keep you folks too long, but as soon as we get back from executive session, we'll get into the rest of the agenda, so please bear with us. And again, my apologies.
Yeah, and I'll send an email to Rodney.
I call the meeting back to order. Again, I apologize for the executive session prior to the meeting. I'd like to invite the audience to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the staff please pass the microphone around and allow the audience to introduce themselves?
Amber King. Terry Smith from Stout Street Foundation. Christy Martin from Community Enterprise. Thelma Cole.
Deborah Bullock with the Commerce City Historical Society and the Cultural Council.
Norma Portnoy with Kids First Healthcare.
Miguel Ortega, Helping Hands Automotive.
Leanne Noel, Grant Administrator, City of Commerce City.
Paulo Diaz with Junior Achievement.
Daniel O'Leary with the Quality Community Foundation.
Ryan Blake with the Quality Community Foundation.
Delilah Collins.
Ty Collins. Tori Collins.
Renee Dees with the Senior Hub. Ona Wigginton with the Denver Hospice.
Kathy Pettit with Ralston House Child Advocacy Center.
And her husband.
Marlon Bender, Pastor, Radiance Church.
Joanne Thompson, Radiance Dance Academy.
Scott Emerson with RNL.
Carlotta Barnes, Quality Community Foundation. Carol Taylor Boyd, Quality Community Foundation.
Thank you. Oh, we already went. Did you already get over?
Stephanie John, Community Reach Center.
Christina Opry, Environmental Learning for Kids.
Guillermo Serna, just a community person. Larry Quintana, Adams 14.
Thank you. Jennifer Bendel, Wish for Wheels.
Tony Jaramillo, Parks and Recreation.
Karen O'Donnell, Parks and Recreation.
Tim Moore, Parks and Recreation.
Alicia Aguilar, Access Housing.
Tanya Moat, Su Teatro Cultural and Performing Arts Center.
Denise Kaza, Commerce City Youth Athletics.
Willis Waterhouse, Commerce City Youth Athletics.
Alfredo Esguerra, Little Giants Learning Center.
María Esguerra, Little Giants Learning Center.
Loretta Garcia, Fish of Commerce City.
Kay Lissy, Food Bank of the Rockies.
Charlie Sharman with the Army at Rocky Mountain Arsenal.
Ken Conwright, Tri-County Health Department.
Melody Mascarenas, Tri-County Health Department.
Maria DeAndre, Public Works Department.
Kathy Blakeman, Human Resources.
Brian Irvin, Backyard Chickens.
John Howard, Information Technology.
Veronica Randall, Prairie View High School HOSA.
Francine Cruzan Garcia, resident.
Her husband.
Carolyn Keith, Parks and Recreation.
Roger Tinkenberg, Finance.
Jim Manier with First Southwest Company.
Nick Eppard with Communications.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. First item on our agenda is proclamations and recognitions. I would like to invite up the Quality Community Foundation representatives to present the grant awards. Mr. O'Leary, good to see you this evening.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for having us up here today. First, I want to start with introducing myself, and then I'll introduce my other board members. I'm Daniel Leary with the Quality Community Foundation Board.
I'm Ryan Blake.
Carlotta Barnes. Carol Taylor Boyd.
Thank you all for being here.
Now I'm going to call up all the grantees. Access Housing, Home Again, Family Support, $4,000. Access Housing, Family Shelter, $4,000. Access Housing, Steps to Success, Self-Sufficiency, $3,950.
Come on up here and just start piling up on the stage.
Adams 14 Education Foundation, Summer Enrichment Program, $2,000. Arapahoe House, Ongoing Services, $3,200. Bridges of Silence, Summer Reading Camp, $2,000. Bridges of Silence, Helping Hands Garden Market, $2,000. Bridges of Silence, After School Academic Program, $2,000. Brothers Redevelopment Paint-a-thon, $2,000. CASA, Volunteer Child Advocate Program, $5,000. Catholic Charities, Emergency Assistance, $3,000. Commerce City Community Enterprise, Family Leadership Training Institute, $1,000. Community Enterprise, Local Food Initiatives, $2,000. Community Enterprise, Derby Community Events, $5,000. The Commerce City Cultural Council, Music in the Park, $3,000. The Cultural Council Art Program, $1,500. Commerce City Historical Society Coloring Book Project, $900. Historical Society General Operating, $1,000. Commerce City Youth Athletics General Operating, $1,000. Commerce City Youth Athletics Girls Softball, $2,000. Commerce City Youth Athletics Baseball Program, $2,000. Kids First Healthcare Community and School-Based Health Program, $10,000. Community Reach Center Wellness Program, $1,000. Environmental Learning for Kids, Commerce City Youth Naturally, $1,000. Fish of Commerce City Emergency Food Bank, $8,000. Food Bank of the Rockies Mobile Food Bank, $5,000. Helping Hands Automotive Workspace Garage and Leasing, $2,000. Hospice of Metro Denver Parent Care Fund General Operating, $1,000. Junior Achievement Programs in Commerce City, $600. Little Giants Learning Center Child Care Services, $8,000. Mercy Housing Holly Park Apartment Resident Services, $4,000. Prairie View High School HOSA Program, $1,500. Radiance Dance Academy for the Dance Academy, $1,200. Senior Hub Meals on Wheels, $5,500. Senior Hub Home Care Services, $2,500.
Forgot Ralston House.
Ralston House Victim Family Support Advocate, $8,000. Stout Street Foundation for the Stout Street Foundation Education, $7,500. Su Teatro for theater, poetry, music, film, $2,000. Wishes for Wills, Building a Better Biking Community for the Youth, $2,150. Is that everybody? Thank you. Yes. At this time, I would like to invite council to come down and be part of our picture. Thank you.
Mr. O'Leary? Before everybody leaves, I wanted to say a few things about what these organizations do for our community. First of all, thanks to the Quality Community Foundation for doing the hard work and looking into these beneficial nonprofits within our community that help our residents in many different aspects of service for our community, because there's a lot of residents that would be doing much worse off if they didn't have the services provided by these nonprofits. So thank all of you that participate in these nonprofits that help our community to continue to grow and offer opportunities to our residents. And again, thank you to the Quality Community Foundation. The one disappointing thing I did notice is, out of all of those names you were calling and the city's giving out money, there were a lot of people that weren't here to pick up their money. Wouldn't it be nice just to take those, the people that didn't show up, spread it out amongst all of those that did show up, and increase those? So keep a mental note on who shows up to pick up the money, because I think that's an important part of the city giving away money to these organizations, is that they come and yeah, you must be present to win. So, it says a lot for those who did show up, because it's important to their organizations to have these funds to be able to operate and to improve services for our community. And there's a lot of them that you named that didn't show up to pick up their money that do exactly the same. But it is beneficial for this council to see those people come and pick up the money, because it means enough for them to come and get it, for us to give it out. And so that kind of was a negative piece for me this evening, is hearing all those names and not watching people come up to accept those checks. And I have to give credit to those of you who did show up to accept those checks, because I know the importance for your organizations, that this money makes a difference. And some of the organizations couldn't operate unless they had the opportunity to benefit from some of these quality community grants. So you might look at, within the structure of your organization, making that somewhat of a prerequisite, that you have to come and pick up the check, or you can't have it. Okay. Because to the credit of all these folks, unfortunately, in 2.5 years, this is the first time we had an unscheduled executive session that went for an hour, and you all waited patiently to get your checks. And it would have been nice to see everybody else here to pick up their checks too. So with that said, thank you all who came to pick up your checks. Thank you to those who didn't come to pick up their checks for what you do for our community. And thank you, Mr. O'Leary, for you and your group to go through and vet out the folks that need the money to operate to improve services in our community. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we got a big giant check here. Is someone going to take that home, or what are we doing with that? All right, I just wanted to make sure that one got picked up, because that was a pretty stiff amount of money. Okay, next item on the agenda, and all of you that were here to pick up checks that don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, I'm going to take a short pause and allow you the opportunity to leave, so you don't have to spend another hour watching what happens. Just a minute. We'll let everybody make their way out into the hallway, and then we'll proceed. We've held everybody up long enough. I hate to take any more breaks. I know. I'm with you. All right, we're going to move on in the agenda. Next item on the agenda is citizen communication. We have one person that has signed up for citizen communication. When I call your name, please come up, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to convey to the council what your concerns are. We'll first call up, and the only person is Brian Irvin. Backyard chickens, I think, is what you said you were. So come on up. Please state your name and address for the record, and let us hear what you have to say.
Okay, Backyard Chickens is actually a website that I'm not affiliated with.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. But
Gotcha.
My name is Brian Irvin. My address is 6450 Hudson Street. I didn't bring any formal material with me today. Back in September, I wrote everybody a letter regarding the keeping of backyard chickens for laying hens. I got a couple of responses back. My partner, Emily, also wrote a letter. Hers is probably a little more refined. She wrote it for a grad student project while she was studying at DU for her master's degree. And you all saw a variation of that letter, but she actually submitted that as part of her studies. And she couldn't make it tonight. She's on a business trip, so I'm kind of representing her as well. But the purpose of me coming tonight was just to kind of introduce myself, put a name to the face, and kind of let you all know where I'm coming from. Ask if any progress has been made on those letters that we wrote. I'm not going to get into the details of the letter. You all have them, and as well as Emily's. So there's not really a reason to go into it too much, but I just want to ask if any progress has been made. If not, is there something else that can be done to bring it to attention or study, kind of address it and move forward? Just something I want to say about laying hens in the backyard environment. I think a lot of younger people that I'm associated with in the feed industry especially are interested in self-sustainability, nutrition, knowing where their food comes from. I think chickens are kind of a small step. It's something that can be debated back and forth over and over, but I can honestly say that being involved in the industry of animal welfare, animal feeding, things like that Commerce City is one of, if not the only surrounding area of Denver, including Denver itself, that does not make some allocation for laying hens. So I can bring back some formal materials if you need me to. Again, I just wanted to introduce myself and also say thank you to Councilman Amador and McEldowney because they kind of helped me with my inaugural act of civic engagement. So this is my first time, and I appreciate you all listening to me. Thank you.
Well, go ahead and stay there for a second. I think I want to have a little bit of dialogue with you. I was born and raised in this city, and I watched all kinds of things transpire and take place over time. And to start off, I'd like to say, my parents live just outside of the city limits on a 5-acre piece, and they have about 50 laying hens, and they sell fresh eggs. And I understand the benefit of having that as a resource. However, just up to a few years before I got onto council, the codes had changed. We did allow hens for many, many years.
I've heard kind of mixed stories about that.
Well, here's the problem, and Mr. Irvin, I'm gonna just be honest with you. We've had the opportunity for people to have hens for a long period of time in Commerce City, and it got changed when I was out of office to not allow the hens. We've always restricted the rooster side of it, but there are some neighborhoods in Commerce City where it was really abused, and it was a negative effect on residents because they lived next door to people that had chickens running everywhere. They weren't penned. I mean, so I think if it was to come back, it would have to be a desire of this council for a council member to bring it up as a topic of discussion, how it was to come back, and to make sure that there were regulations in place to be able to control it. It was to the point of where my wife parked at some friend's house and the neighbor's chicken got in the car and laid an egg in the car. There's a problem with how you manage your animals. And just recently, within the last year and a half, I had some neighbors that were concerned about the neighbor down the street having some goats. And so the one thing that we have to realize is we live in a residential setting, and we want to provide good services and good opportunity for everybody, not to take away your opportunity to raise eggs and have a good quality, confined, operating coop with a couple of hens. But it has been abused in the past. So it's some of the past that you're battling, as well as some of the new mentality of being self-sufficient and raising organic type of foods for yourself. So I want you to just bear with the council that it's not just whether or not we would allow you to have some hens. It's battling what we've came from to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to be on the same page with you as to how this would kind of work. I know that there's probably some people not only in the city but in this room that would say, oh my God, no, don't allow chickens. We went through that before. So it's a very polarized political issue for our community. And it would take some steps to be able to show that it could be managed. And the problem is, in some areas, I'm concerned whether it could be managed or not. I'm a pro person to say, let's have a few hens, but the downside is it's other people who have abused it that take away and hurt people to have that right. So it's something that a dialogue, I think, has to happen with this council as to what that would mean and how it would be managed. Because right now, we're still a little bruised over the misuse of it happening in the past. And that's all I really have to say. Not that your intentions are valid, but I think that this council has to have a sit down and really have a discussion. I mean, we're at a point now where we're talking about people's fireplaces and stuff, and I don't want government to grow too large, but I want to make sure that we try to embrace the opportunities for all our residents without causing a negative impact on the others.
Certainly, and
Okay.
I think management is the key statement there, and I can kind of say that I understand that it's a polarizing topic just for the reasons that you stated. I think in my own experience, the people who are interested in breaking laws with chickens are going to break laws regardless of their existence, and I think management, just managing how people are allowed to have them and keep them, there's a stack of examples of cities next door to us that do it, and I think do it well. Denver's a really, really good one that I've looked into, and I think they do it really well, and they manage those problems. I guess, if there's something else I can do, something else that can be done, please let me know.
Well, I've read your letters. They're very well put together. You and your partner did a great job of putting those letters together. It's on my mind all the time, but I'm really looking to my council to say, hey, it's time we bring this topic forward. We've gotten information from you, and as many positive letters for having chickens, we get negative letters that people are still having chickens when it's not allowed at this time. Mm-hmm. We also abut an unincorporated part of Adams County that's a very high-density residential neighborhood that abuts our residential neighborhood. They allow chickens and roosters, and we don't. And so we get, there's that cross complaints, and we just ended up dealing with a very polarizing pig issue not too long ago. So we've dealt with the pigs and the goats and the chickens, and to come back and to sit down and have some thoughtful conversation about how this can be done and done right. I'm willing to have that conversation, but I think that the council has to be ready for that conversation as well.
Okay.
Okay, now let me see if there's anybody else that would like to speak on the topic. Mr. McEldowney?
Thanks for coming forward, Mr. Urban. I appreciate you taking this first step and obviously being able to speak to council and convey your interest. I've certainly heard from others in the community that show similar interest, and I believe as we exchanged in our note, I know folks elsewhere in the metro area who have taken the opportunity that their community has offered. I think, to the mayor's point, it's an item that we have a special history with. We've got to consider. I would suggest that council, with council support, ask staff, and I know we have a lot on staff's plate as it is, but to do a preliminary comparison of our city to our peer cities in terms of what they have implemented in terms of the allowances, the management, the restrictions, et cetera, whatever the controls, if you will, that are put in place, and if we could have that come back at a study session to at least get a primer on the current state of things. I think from the time that this city last allowed them to now, it's light years in many respects. There is certainly a movement afoot, not just in this state, but nationally, to see this movement to self-produced food. And I think we need to learn from whatever lessons we can, be it from other communities here in the metro area or elsewhere in the country that have had a program that's been implemented and had a chance to mature and refine, and see if there are lessons that we can learn that would allow us to explore this. So I know we're in citizen communication, but I would move that council support directing staff as I've suggested.
Thank you, Mr. McEldowney. I do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Mr. Amador?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to direct staff to get some information about what our peer cities are doing in respect to managing a situation for having self-sustainable hen population in your backyard. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. The staff will do some research, and I have your address and stuff, but if the staff needs a contact information, they can keep you apprised on what those findings are. Okay?
Great, thank you very much.
Mr. Amador, did you have a comment before
I did.
I release Mr. Irvin?
Thank you, Brian, for coming forward. I don't think I could have said it any more better than Jason has just now. I believe that the city does need to revisit, and we have the motion in a second, so we'll go there. About 40% of my calls are regarding livestock in the city, and when I did run my campaign, I did say that I would visit this particular ordinance. So thank you again, and things will move forward. I'm not sure in which fashion, but
thank you.
We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, thank you. And, how do I follow up? Just kind of sit back and wait?
No, actually, the assistant city manager will give you his card. You can contact him, and that way he can get a contact information for you, and as they proceed, the next time the council sits down to discuss this, whether it's in a study session or not, you'd be invited to come down and hear the dialogue. So thank you for coming in this evening.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And there's quite a lot on the consent agenda. Is there any council member that would like to pull anything off of the consent agenda? There are 9 items listed. Does anybody wish to remove an item? Mr. McEldowney.
I would be open to move for approval of the consent agenda.
All right, I just want to make sure there's nobody who wants to remove an item. If you do, raise your hand so I know. Seeing no one, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Bullock?
Second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Will the attorney please read the titles of the consent agenda?
Yes. Title to Ordinance Z 908-14, an ordinance rezoning from C3 to R1 zone district. The property described in Exhibit A, attached hereto, made a part hereof, located at 5928 Poplar Street, Commerce City, Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the City of Commerce City, Colorado to reflect said rezoning. Title of Ordinance 1992 reads, an ordinance amending certain sections of the Commerce City Land Development Code pertaining to floodplain regulation. Title of Ordinance 1995, an ordinance amending Ordinance 1845 of the City of Commerce City regarding delegation of authority by the City Council to the Commerce City Police Pension Board. Title of Ordinance, or Title of Resolution 2014-10, a resolution approving amendment to 2012 intergovernmental agreement between the City of Commerce City and the Urban Renewal Authority of the City of Commerce City. Title of Resolution 2014-13, a resolution approving intergovernmental agreement between the City of Commerce City and Adams 14 School District regarding replacement, reconstruction of elementary school baseball, softball fields. Title of Resolution 2014-19, a resolution supporting a grant application for a local government planning grant from the State Board of the Great Outdoors, Colorado for the Turnberry Neighborhood Park planning. Title of Resolution 2014-21, a resolution authorizing execution of maintenance contract for 104th Avenue, also known as State Highway 44, by and between the City of Commerce City and the Colorado Department of Transportation. Title of Resolution 2014-22, a resolution appointing members to the Youth Commission of Commerce City. Title of Resolution 2014-24, a resolution approving Tower Road Improvements Project Funding Agreement. That's the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Thank you. I have a motion. It's been seconded. All the titles have been read, and I'll ask for a roll call vote. Yours isn't flashing? Yours says no? Can you reset it, please?
Okay. It's flashing again. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead. You're the last one, Mr. Bullock.
Oh, okay.
Let the record show the consent agenda has been approved unanimously this evening by the council. Yes, ma'am? About?
Youth Commission.
No, not now. It's too late. Sorry. Well, and I would revert to the attorney, but I don't believe you can discuss anything on the consent agenda unless it's been polled. Is that correct?
That's true. What could be done is during administrative council business, if something wants to be said, Councilwoman Carson can mention it at that time if she wants to make comments regarding something that's done this evening.
And I don't have a problem, Councilwoman Carson, allow you to make some comments, but I just want to make sure it's at the appropriate time, because I would hate to approve a consent agenda and have discussion about a consent agenda item. So it's not about you, it's about the protocol. And if you would like to bring it up during council communication at the end of the meeting, I would be glad to allow you to have your discussion. Okay? All right. Okay, next item on the agenda, we did have a consent agenda item that would, no consent agenda items were pulled. Next item is a public hearing, CU-84-14. I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the city if it's prepared to make their presentation. It looks like he's getting ready.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. As mentioned, there is one previous case this evening. It's case CU-84-14. The applicant is Viola Environmental Services Technical Solutions for property located at 9131 East 96th Avenue, and their request is the approval of a conditional use permit in order to bring their operations into legal and conforming status. Subject property is located just north of 96th Avenue. It's currently zoned I-3. It's surrounded by other heavy industrial users, specifically the Sinclair Terminal to the west, Rocky Mountain Natural Meats to the south, several heavy industrial users to the east, and then a Commerce City parcel located just north that's used for drainage for the area. The site is a bit oddly shaped as it is a flagpole lot. It does extend from the active operations portion of their site south along the frontage of the properties to the south all the way to 96th Avenue. That will be subsequently dedicated as public right-of-way and improved at a future date. There is relevant case history related to this subject property. Back in 2007, the site was annexed as part of the Northern Enclave industrial annexation. It was subsequently zoned by City Council in 2008. It was rezoned to the current I-3 zoning designation. And then in January of this year, the Board of Adjustment approved several variances to the fence and gate setback requirements in order to allow the existing fence and gate locations to remain where they currently are. And this is just an aerial that sort of highlights what was approved previously by the Board of Adjustment. Currently, the applicant understands and has agreed that the red box will be dedicated as future right-of-way and improved by them at a future date as agreed to in their public improvement agreement. The area that is highlighted with the green dotted line, that's the approximate line of their existing fence location. And then the yellow boxes indicate the approximate location for the existing gates. This is just another photo that shows the subject property. The applicant's property is located on the right-hand side of the photo. The area in the middle is the area to be dedicated and improved at a future date. Then the existing right-of-way located on the left-hand part of the screen here. The relevant site history, the site was originally developed in 1980 in unincorporated Adams County. A year later, they were granted approval for a conditional use permit from Adams County in order to operate a solvent recycling and storage facility. Fast forward to 1999, Veolia, the applicant this evening, purchases the subject property and begins their operations. And then, as previously mentioned, 2007, the city annexes the subject property, and the operations become legally non-conforming. That means it's legal, it just doesn't conform to the requirements of the code, that they obtain the conditional use permit, which is before the council this evening. In 2008, being aware of this requirement, the applicant voluntarily submitted their application for a conditional use permit to bring their operations into legal and conforming status. And since that time, the applicant and the city have been in discussions regarding the right-of-way dedication and improvements, as previously mentioned, along Alton Court. As a company, Veolia is an international company. Their corporate headquarters are in Paris, France. They've been operating for over 150 years. They have a presence in 48 countries with 220,000 employees worldwide, making them the 33rd largest employer in the world. They are a Fortune Global 150 company, reporting $38.8 billion in revenues in 2012. In terms of their North American operations, those are headquartered in Chicago. They have a presence in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada, 5,400 employees. They reported $1.1 billion in revenues in 2012. And according to their website, their mission is to deliver value-added services that protect people and improve the environment. In terms of the specific location here in Commerce City, that property operates 24/7, 365. They have anywhere between 50 and 60 employees, and they are licensed for the treatment and storage operations for hazardous and non-hazardous materials with some fuel blending. There is no disposal that occurs at this facility, and this is the regional hub for the Rocky Mountain region. In terms of regulating agencies, they are regulated heavily at a variety of different levels of government. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Tri-County Health Department, the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District, as well as the South Adams County Fire Protection District. This is the site plan that's been submitted by the applicant. Again, the area to be dedicated is in this hatch color here. Primary entrance from the property is located in the southeast corner, so north would be on the left-hand side of this image here. Their main office located in the general center of the site, surrounded by parking, and then to the west and north of the site is a variety of warehouse buildings, tanks, maintenance buildings, and things that they use in everyday operations. The area that's in the dark gray here, those are areas that potentially could be used for future expansion of their operations or transportation network within their facility, things of that nature. This is an image of the existing office building that's located in the general center of the site. There is a fully functioning lab and office facilities on the subject property, and those are all housed in this specific building here. In terms of receiving materials, they are licensed to receive both bulk and non-bulk material. They can receive anything from aerosol cans to research chemicals. The way it's usually initiated is the applicant, the customer, the generator, typically fills out a waste information profile, and that is how the applicant determines what the material is, how it will be stored, how it will be treated, and what they will do with it on their property. In the event that one of their customers or generators does need a little bit of help transporting their materials, they do have a full fleet of trucks and trailers and licensed DOT, Department of Transportation, drivers for hazardous and non-hazardous materials. This is just an image indicating kind of the delivery mechanism for the property. In terms of storage on site, there is containerized waste that's placed into storage pending the analysis of that waste information profile. Those wastes are then segregated by hazardous class and chemical compatibility for obvious reasons. Their bulk liquid wastes are not placed into tanks until their analysis results are confirmed and complete, and that's in order to ensure consistency with the original waste information profile. This image just kind of gives an idea of some of the warehouse buildings and storage buildings that are located on the subject property where they store some of this material. And this image indicates some of the tanks that are currently on site. These are storage tanks that they use for the materials that they get. This tall aluminum-looking contraption, for lack of the technical term, is their fractionation distillation column, and that's where they do a lot of separation of the chemicals or materials once they're received in order to reduce or eliminate their hazardousness. In terms of treating, they are licensed for containerized waste to do neutralization, treat aerosol cans, treat via solidification, as well as blending. Their tank waste, they use the thin film fractionation distillation column. Their tank farms, phase separation, filtration, solvent extraction, and then aqueous and fuel blending. In terms of kind of the outbound nature of their operations, roughly half of all the waste that they receive at the facility are stored in order to accumulate a full train or truckload. When they get that full load, they will load it, and then they will ship it off to a disposal facility somewhere else. Again, this facility does not do any disposal, and the disposal facility could be any one of a number of facilities across the country. Any items that can be reclaimed or can be used directly without treatment are also sold back to the commercial businesses throughout the United States. In terms of security of their property, there's a chain link fence on site with barbed wire around the entire property. They also have chain link fences around their active units as required by the CDPHE. Their gates leading to the process areas are locked at all times. There are warning signs posted on the fence. There's 24-hour surveillance installed on the property. And since Veolia has been operating at this site since 1999, there have been no emergencies at the facility. In terms of review of the application, there were sort of 4 key areas the development review team focused on. 1, the specific code requirements. 2, the referral agency responses. 3, the general application analysis. And then 4, the specific analysis of the request against the conditional use permit approval criteria. In reviewing the first criteria there, the LDC requirement, any property that primarily manufactures, processes, uses, sales, or storage of any flammable, corrosive, explosive, or toxic substance is required to be in an I3 zone district and obtain the conditional use permit. They are currently located in the I3 zone district, and the request this evening is for the conditional use permit. It was critical for the development review team to ensure that there was response from several outside organizations as they are heavily regulated. 2 of the key responses were received from the fire district. The fire district responded that they have worked closely with Veolia in the past and they don't have any issues with their facility, that they're well aware of the hazardous materials in their operations, and that they recently updated their fire protection devices. In terms of response from the Tri-County Health Department, essentially the applicants provided enough information that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment felt that they confirmed that the applicant has met the requirements for their air emissions permit. In terms of review of the application in general, there were no issues identified by any of their outside regulating agencies. As a matter of fact, all of the comments that staff received were very much in support of this operation and Veolia themselves and the way that they operate and the way they conduct business. It was important for staff to keep in mind that the site was originally developed in 1980 and received a conditional use permit from the county back in 1981. And that when the site was annexed in 2007, that's what triggered the legal nonconformity and the requirement to come before you this evening. And it does say something for Veolia that they have voluntarily submitted this application in order to bring their operation into compliance with the city's code. And additionally, it was important that the applicant will be dedicating and constructing right-of-way in front of their active operations as part of Alton Court when a few triggers in their public improvement agreement are reached. In terms of the criteria for conditional use permit, again, the site's been in operation since 1981. Since its annexation, no complaints have been filed with the city, and the dedication of right-of-way will only improve traffic and circulation in the area. The applicant is proactive in addressing any impacts that there are via their emergency response plans in order to mitigate any adverse scenarios. The site was developed again in the early 1980s for exactly this type of operation. It's adequately served by the necessary infrastructure in terms of utilities, Excel, water, etc. The applicant has provided assurance of their continued maintenance. They have a strong track record, and they'll be required to do so via this approval, pending approval, and the regulating agencies. Again, all regulating agencies indicated compliance with their requirements and that the use of the property for heavy industrial uses is consistent with other uses in the area. To date, staff has not been contacted regarding this request during the notification period. And on February 4th of 2014, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval to City Council for the requested conditional use permit, subject to conditions. Generally speaking, there are 5 conditions of approval related to public improvements, site operations, and compliance with regulating agencies. The Planning Commission felt that these conditions ensured compatibility with the area and would give City Council the authority to review any changes in operations. And that would conclude the staff presentation for this evening. However, certainly if there are any questions from the council, staff would be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from the council to the staff at this time? Anybody? Mr. Douglas.
Thank you for your presentation. The basis of this, has there been any accidents or spills at the facility? And,
Not since 1999, since Veolia took over. Records were hard to get before that just because previous owners and operators are no longer there. But since 1999, there's been no accidents, no emergencies.
okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I would ask the applicant if they'd like to come forward and add anything to the hearing. Please state your name and address.
My name is Thomas Ankner. I live at 12103 Columbine Street, Thornton, Colorado. The facility is at 9131 East 96th Avenue in Henderson, Colorado. I appreciate Paul for presenting the information. The facility has been in business, as you can see, for over 30 years. A well-run facility, a very solid, financially strong company. Financial assurance is in place, closure costs are in place, facility is well managed. I appreciate your consideration of all the merits that Paul's presented to you, and I would ask that you concur with his recommendation and the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone on the council that has any questions for the applicant at this time? Seeing no one, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this matter before we move forward in the public hearing? For or against? Nobody. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'll ask the council if they'd like to discuss the case any further now that the hearing is closed. Mr. McAdory?
No discussion. I'm ready for a motion regarding Planning Commission minutes. We're ready.
Any discussion before I move forward with the motion? Seeing none, Mr. McElhenney, go ahead.
I'd move that we approve the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock?
Second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. I'm open for a motion to approve the conditional use permit. Mr. McElhenney.
Move to approve the conditional use permit CU-84-14.
Thank you. Open for a second. Mr. Amador? Mr. Amador seconds. I have a motion and a second. I'd ask the city attorney to please read the title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prior to doing so, I would point out there are 2 typographical errors in the conditional use permit. They are minor and will be corrected administratively. Council does not need to take action with regard to the corrections. One correction is in paragraph 3 on page 1. The word "and" should be inserted on the second line of that paragraph following the words Planning Commission review and City Council. And again, in paragraph 4 on the second page, it should the word "proved" should say "provide." The applicant shall be required to provide copies of all new, so forth. As council knows, I have not been in the office in the last few days, and I didn't have a chance to review this document until this evening. So for that, I apologize.
Okay.
So the title reads CU-84-14, a conditional use permit for a hazardous waste treatment, storage, and recycling facility, case CU-84-14.
Thank you. I've got a motion and a second. The title's been read, and I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that the conditional use permit has been approved by council unanimously this evening. Thank you, folks, for coming in. Next item on the agenda is ordinances on first reading. We'll start with ordinance 1996. Does council have any questions of staff regarding this ordinance? Mr. Bullock.
I'm here for the motion, sir.
Okay. There are no questions of staff at this time by the council. I'm open for the motion, Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce ordinance 1996. Council is seated.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Teeter.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this ordinance before we move forward? Seeing no one, I have a motion and a second. Mr. Attorney, please read the title.
Title reads, Ordinance at 1996, an ordinance amending the 2014 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Kaiser Permanente Walk and Wheel Grant funds in the amount of $12,275 to fund the Wellness Committee program and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that ordinance 1996 has been introduced unanimously by the council this evening. Excuse me. Next, we move to ordinance 1997. Does any council members have any questions of staff regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on ordinance 1997? Seeing no one, I am open for a motion. Mr. McEldowney.
Would move to introduce ordinance 1997 regarding Vail Grant Program. Council is seated.
Thank you. I'm open for a second.
Okay.
Mr. Bullock.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The city attorney, please read the title.
Title reads, Ordinance 1997, an ordinance amending the 2014 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Vail Grant in the amount of $3,894 for the support of the Community Justice Program and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that ordinance 1997 has been introduced unanimously by the council this evening. Next is ordinance 1999. Does the council have any questions for staff regarding this ordinance? Mr. Douglas, do you have a question? No. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on ordinance 1999? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion. Mr. McEldowney.
Would move to introduce ordinance 1999, CDOT funding for DUI enforcement. Council is seated.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second. Will the attorney please read the title?
Title of Ordinance 1999 reads, an ordinance amending the 2000 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, grant funds in the amount of $7,000 for the support of DUI enforcement and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. And that typo will be corrected administratively.
Great, thank you. I have a motion. The second title has been read. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that ordinance 1999 has been introduced unanimously by the council this evening. We'll move on to ordinance 2001. Does council have any questions of staff regarding this ordinance? Seeing no one, does anybody in the audience would like to speak on ordinance 2001 this evening? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce ordinance 2001, amending the 2014 budget. Council is seated.
Thank you. I'm open for a second. Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads Ordinance 2001, an ordinance amending the 2014 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by transferring a portion of the unencumbered fund balance in the general fund to the Fund for the Urban Renewal Authority of the City of Commerce City and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that ordinance 2001 has been introduced by council this evening unanimously. Next is ordinance 2002, 2002. Council, have any questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on ordinance 2002? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce ordinance 2002, the issuance of the bonds for revenue. Council is seated.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Title reads Ordinance 2002, an ordinance authorizing the issuance by the City of Commerce City, Colorado of its sales and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2014, and providing other details in connection therewith.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, ordinance 2002 has been introduced unanimously by the council this evening. Now we'll move into the presentation portion of our council meeting. We have Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge update, and I would invite Manager David Lucas to come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for the council, Mayor. I just want to give you guys a quick update before your trip. And what we've done is we've created a presentation almost similar to a year in review to kind of kick things off, and also with a focus on some of our master planning work that we are involved in right now at the refuge. So I feel those are the important things, but we're obviously open to questions of anything that's of interest to you all as we move forward. So we did a quick introduction, that just a reminder that the refuge does manage multiple properties in Denver. The Rocky Mountain Arsenal is obviously the largest property, the Rocky Flats Refuge, Two Ponds Refuge in Arvada, and also several easements up along the South Platte River and some properties near Fort Collins. The biggest point that we will like to communicate is in 2012 we had 23,000 visitors to the refuge. In 2013 we had over 300,000 visitors. Pretty remarkable increase. However, we did have a couple of low points this year as well. We had some significant flood damage, and we also were shut down for 17 days due to the federal government shutdown. We did have some regional directors' priorities this year, which we completely accomplished. Particularly of interest is our regional director would like us to develop a timeline for outlining the steps and milestones about a possible reintroduction of the endangered black-footed ferret to the refuge. So as you know, one of our goals on the refuge is species of concern. The black-footed ferret is the most endangered mammal in North America, and it's a highly threatened species, and this site is of interest. We are proposing this as something that we'll talk about in the master plan as well. One tidbit on Rocky Flats was at the start of the year we accepted 623 acres last year in the southwest corner of the refuge. Thursday last week we added another 756 acres. So that refuge continues to grow, but we're almost done with that. Another big highlight, as many of you might remember, was Secretary Salazar, John Hickenlooper, and Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood came out. Many of you guys were there as well for the announcement of the first connection of the Arsenal to the Sand Creek Regional Greenway, and for what's called the Refuge to Refuge Trail that will go from the Arsenal across town to Rocky Flats, eventually on to Rocky Mountain National Park. One little known fact, we continue to host the Junior Duck Stamp Contest. This was the winner last year, so it's kind of fun. Sixth annual Fishing Frenzy. massive collaborative effort with, led by Commerce City Parks and Recs. Partnership with Bass Pro Shop. Saw 626 participants last year, and this event's scheduled for April 12th this year. Hope folks can maybe make it. That kicks off our fishing season for the year. Wild and Fire Program. We had some wildfires last year. We also had one successful prescribed burn, and we also support the interagency fire program as well. We host the Mid-Plains crew pictured there. They went out on multiple assignments last year. It was a busy year. And one of our employees on the left, Jesse Fernandez, also assists with a lot of that. Of interest, we are planning on prescribed fires on Thursday and Friday of this week, so you may see that. We did one several weeks ago. We also had two wildfires over by south of the high school in the last 2 weeks. Connecting youth with nature continues to be one of our big programs, one of our big goals at the refuge. We saw over 20,000 school children last year in formal environmental education programs. Volunteerism, another important aspect to what we do. The butterfly garden in the top left corner was constructed by volunteers and dedicated last year. We also saw 8,197 volunteer hours last year. That's pretty impressive. That's a lot of hard work by a lot of volunteers, many of which you all know well, one of which sitting on your council right there. So we appreciate that, and we wouldn't be able to do it without their help. So, September flood damage. You guys live this, don't need to go into this a whole lot, but we are continuing to rebuild. Most things have started to be rebuilt. We do have about 4 public use trails that we have not rebuilt yet, and a couple of administrative roads. The dam on the refuge is currently being reconstructed by City of Denver, FEMA, and Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, expecting to rebuild this fall. Got a couple of characters in this photo here. Thank you all for your support. We also had the Ivory Crush this year, which was a unique event to highlight wildlife trafficking across the world. As you remember, we crushed 6 tons of confiscated African elephant ivory. Within the following months, China, Hong Kong, France, other countries followed suit. And within the last month, the U.S. passed a ban on the sale of illegal ivory within the United States. Big thanks. Our director from D.C., various celebrities like Kristen Davis, et cetera, attended. Pretty neat event. And of interest, Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge actually surpassed Yellowstone, Yosemite, every other part of the Department of Interior in the final quarter of 2013 for media. So that's a pretty big thing. Oh, that slide was a little overdone. So, second annual Bison Roundup, we had that this year. Exciting event. Unfortunately, a lot of folks weren't able to make it because just timing and other things. But we did handle the majority of the bison, and we were able to reduce our herd by 18 animals this year, several of which moved on to other refuges across the country. Made the front page of the paper over that one. Denver Post, that was a highlight as well this year. Staff photo, just for fun, so you can see our staff. So now I'm going to roll into a handful of points on our master planning process. So as we've talked about, in 2013, we officially kicked off the revision of our 1996 master plan. The 1996 master plan was very focused on how the refuge would become a refuge, how the refuge would act during the cleanup process and during the remediation process, and led to a great place to where we are now. Probably one of our big messages, and I actually heard it last night on the Oscars, was honoring the past, maintaining the present, and shaping the future. I think that's actually a good message for about everything we all do as public servants. But I think that's one of the major themes to this master planning effort. We are honoring the past, the history of the site, what the site was. We're trying to figure out exactly what this refuge is going to become, and then really trying to focus a lot on infrastructure because, as I mentioned, we went from 23,000 visitors to 300,000 visitors in 1 year, and we are planning for visitation of 1 million visitors by the end of this 15 years. We think that's actually feasible based on basic calculations. I mean, there's not any higher math that will really help us with that, but it makes sense. So we expect to be done with this by the end of 2015. So Commerce City has agreed to be a cooperating agency. We've seen Chris, Carolyn, Tracy, how many folks? All sorts of folks helping us on our planning team, which is awesome and extremely helpful. We began public scoping in August. We held 4 public meetings up until October 11th, and then we extended for 2 additional weeks. We held meetings in Reunion, Stapleton, Commerce City, and Montbello Green Valley Ranch. There's also been the U.S. Geological Survey. They do a lot of work for us, scientific support work, had also completed some focus groups and is going to continue to do some focus groups with a particular focus on connecting new audiences and our proximate neighbors. What are those gaps to why we're not connecting with the neighborhoods around us, and really exploring that. I believe Renee actually participated in one of those. Major issues and challenges ahead of us in this planning. Again, supporting increased visitation, planning for 1 million visitors, improved access within the refuge and various modes of transportation. We've heard a great deal about our restrictions on bicycles, our various restrictions, and how we can improve those. Increasing programming to visitors and environmental education programs. We feel very strongly that one of the huge roles that the Arsenal can play is connecting future generations to wildlife and to our conservation ethics. Where else in the country can we connect to quite so many people? There isn't any other place that we're aware of. Master planning boundaries and adjacent landscapes. So there's a lot of development occurring on all sides of us right now, with DIA, with Stapleton, Commerce Cities, got some new plans on the table as well. So we really hope to work with each of these adjacent communities and figure out exactly what their vision is, figure out what our vision is, so that we connect well. As I mentioned, reintroduction of the endangered black-footed ferret is one of our key conservation issues. And as I also mentioned, retaining the history and the significance of the site while shifting attention to this future direction of the refuge. So with that, I'm going to show you what our draft vision statement is, and I think that will hopefully roll all of this together. As the sun rises, bison thunder across the prairie, red-tailed hawks soar overhead, and the urban bustle begins. Lands once known for their agricultural industrial uses are valued today as our nation's premier urban wildlife refuges, where time moves at nature's pace and wildlife have the right of way. Propelled by a strong public and private partnerships, refuge stewards at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, Two Ponds, and Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuges continue to work to repair and regenerate wildlife habitat. These prairie oases, nestled within Colorado's Front Range communities, welcome visitors from near and far and foster an appreciation for nature by connecting people with the land for generations to come. So where are we in this process? We're about halfway through the real development process. So we go through a scoping process, we go through a vision process, we go through an alternatives process. Now we're going to sit down over the next couple of weeks, and I have a slide to kind of go through this, next couple of months, and start writing things down and putting those on paper to reach a draft plan by the fall of 2014. 2014 fall, we will release that draft plan for public comment, have additional public meetings with the goal of reaching a final plan. Summer of 2015 is our goal. So there's obviously strong environmental compliance steps, environmental impact statement, and all those NEPA things that are going on in the background. But our goal is plain language, providing a good, useful document to everyone, public, stakeholders, et cetera. So, quick refresher, scoping. We had a visitor services workshop because this plan is very heavy on what we call visitor services. We've done a lot of our habitat work, our fire work, our invasive plants work, our prairie dog management work. That's all been kind of done in other plans. This is a very visitor services and infrastructure focused plan. We did vision and goals. We actually had a separate transportation workshop. The Federal Highways Administration is helping us a lot with our transportation work. We just finished our alternatives workshop. This next objectives workshop is being shifted a little bit. We're going to move that to the 24th and give ourselves a month and actually really get some maps out and start figuring out some ideas and solutions. At which point we'll have additional meetings writing that draft plan. Internal briefings, summer of 2014. We would offer at that point to provide updates as well to key governmental stakeholders, whoever those may be. So that will be the timing for our next update of when things are actually on maps, on paper, and interesting to look at. Then we'll release that in the fall. So with that, I've got a couple of slides before I get to questions. These are all 2013 photos off our Facebook page, just a handful, but kind of neat to see some of the pictures that were taken just this year by our visitors. Pretty remarkable stuff going on out there. With that, I have questions, and also for your information, Charlie Sharman, Program Manager from the Army, is here if we have any questions specific to that. Ken's here from Tri-County, Melody's here from Tri-County. Not exactly sure what we would, what's got you guys interested this evening.
I'd like to start off by, number one, thanking you. I think the refuge has come a long ways over the years of, being a kid and camping out there as a Boy Scout to what it's become. I did have a few things I wanted to talk about. 96th Avenue, of course, that's going through, and that northeastern border. Hopefully we can get that all squared away and you guys can adjust your fence so that the right land is part of the refuge and we can square up those borders. But with that said, that's also going to increase and open up about 2,000 new building sites for residential development, which is a good thing for Commerce City. The downside, and something that I've brought up several times talking with Ken and the area boards portion, and I think some of them you've been at, is the fact that we have a couple of critters that like to leave and come back and forth onto the refuge, would be the coyote and the prairie dogs. And what concerns me primarily in making sure that we're working together as agencies, Tri-County, Commerce City, the refuge, is to make sure that we plan and have a process in place if the plague does come back, which I anticipate it will come back to the refuge at some time. I think it's been since 1985 or something since the plague's been out on the refuge. Given the fact that prairie dogs now are encroaching upon some of the residential areas, and we don't want any of our residents to get sick, and we want to have a plan in place, and something that I think we all should be working on together. Same with the coyotes going into people's yards and living near wildlife, and I think it's important for those subdivisions that are around the refuge to make sure that our residents get some kind of notification of the fact that there are wildlife in the area, how to deal with, if you come in contact with a coyote or if you see dead prairie dogs and that kind of stuff, so that we can keep people aware. I also had a lady from the Montbello area had sent out an email not too long ago concerning Commerce City, Denver, and Aurora. They sent it to all three mayors. I passed it along to our city manager about dumping that is occurring primarily along the refuge on the outside of the fence. And we don't want that to be there for very long. If it happens, we need to control what we can, and we need to get it out of there. So I'd ask that you partner with us if you see anything dumped along the Commerce City jurisdictional boundaries of the refuge, that you communicate with our staff so that we can make sure that we get that picked up. And with some of the winds that we've been seeing over the last month or so, we know the fence loads up, and we want to work together as a partner to keep that space clean so that when people do come out and want to see the refuge, that they don't see all this trash along the fence, and we want to coordinate. So I noticed that being one of the concerns brought to my attention recently by this email from the lady in Montbello. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and is a little concerning to me, we did the Ivory Crush to make a statement. I think it worked well. But just recently, the Colorado Safari Club auctioned off 3 black rhino hunts, and it kind of works against the whole goal if we're going to promote hunting the black rhino and crushing ivory at the same time, and how we can get these agencies to work together so that we can get the message across that we're trying to preserve the endangered species worldwide. Okay. And that's all I really have, and you can address any of those if you like.
Okay. Well, I really like your comment about Buffalo Highlands coming in. As you know, we have 2 neighborhoods that will actually be adjacent to us when all this is said and done. That's the first time. One will be the new Stapleton development, and the other will be Buffalo Highlands. Everything else, historically, we've had a large road between us and our neighbors. So we've been trying to think about the best ways to communicate, honestly, down to some of the hokey stuff, like once they all move in, having a barbecue and inviting them out so we can explain our position on matters and understanding that, getting to know folks. So that is a unique challenge. One thing we are talking about specific to our prairie dog management, as you know, is we did implement a plan to try to control our prairie dog populations and get those in order. As a part of that, we are implementing plague management techniques, which would be, we're starting this spring, which is dusting for the vector for plague, which are the fleas, and reducing those flea populations. Now, you can never completely eliminate the risk, as you said. There's a chance that it could come back, but we are hopeful that reintroduction of the black-footed ferrets, as you know, a male eats 100 and a female eats 150 prairie dogs per year. That if we do bring in the ferrets, that may seek to create a bit of a more natural process with our prairie dog populations. Coyotes are another challenge that we're dealing with the state and everybody else. But I think those positive relationships and starting off with these new neighborhoods from day one, I think is going to be very important because everybody knows that the expectations that the developers set for those folks are important to those individuals buying those homes. I think a lot of those folks will buy those homes based on their proximity to the refuge and the views and what they're going to obtain from that. But if they get false impressions or false understandings from developers, that can create problems for us down the road. Your next question, let's see, I'm trying to go through the sequence here.
Trash.
Dumping. I'm very excited to say that we did get a law enforcement officer on this year, and we did issue our first citation for dumping along 56th Avenue. It's an interesting challenge. It actually took Adams County Sheriff going with us because that property on the north side of the road was Adams County. We quickly figured out that Denver didn't want any part of that one, but we did go into Denver and issue those citations for the 11 bags of trash that apparently blew to the inside of our fence. But it was a sizable $575 fine. The message will get around, and we will continue to go after dumpers. That's a problem, and I think it's a good thing for all of us to work together on because it's a challenge. But I think, again, I'm hopeful that one of those aspects of our plans that we're talking about is kind of removing some of those big metal fences and creating a more welcoming appearance for all our neighbors. I hope that will allow folks to become more engaged with what's on the other side of the fence, respect what's on the other side of the fence, and maybe have a little less desire just to throw things up against the fence. But that's kind of an unknown on that one. But we did, like I said, I'm very pleased to say we did issue our first violation down into Denver for somebody that dumped on 56th. What other question was there?
Black rhinos.
Oh, yes, that's an interesting one. So one thing that's come out in our plan is some folks have really felt that we should memorialize the Ivory Crush and use it as a larger learning experience at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, along with the repository, which some of you have been able to visit, and continue to push that message across the country. In terms of the Colorado Safari and the black rhino, that's certainly a challenging issue, not really necessarily germane to what we do day to day at the refuge, but I think point has been taken by public at large for sure.
Okay, a few more things that have come to mind.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make you aware that legislation did pass on the predatory towing. So that is now in effect a law, and I think we can deal with the situation that you observed down on 72nd Avenue.
Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. And we did it for all of our residents that were being taken advantage of. Next, I would like to say, we are going to Washington. Several of us are leaving tomorrow, and we're out there. We're going to be meeting with your folks while we're out there, and we want to make sure we carry the message. And the message in the past has been that we still would like to make the bison herd a consumable product, continue to push that. Is there any efforts you need above and beyond that with the black-footed ferret? Anything that we can do to help the refuge with its goals and objectives while we're out there?
I think there's a couple of really important points. We'll get to bison in a minute. But to me, I think what Commerce City shows the folks in Washington is that neighborhoods and communities of all types, all sizes, and various different, let's just say non-traditional backgrounds, because most of our refuges are rural. Most of our refuges are in places where people drive pickup trucks with gun racks, and that's our community that we are more accustomed to, and our folks back in D.C. are accustomed to. They're not used to the urban refuge. And this is the urban refuge, the premier urban refuge in my mind across the country. And I think you guys can carry that message that our goal on these refuges is to be inclusive, not exclusive. And a little background on that is many of the programs that are taking place now to support urban refuges are very focused on the Northeast. That's what people think of when they think of urban communities in our country, because the vast majority of folks still live back east. They're packed in like rats. And they don't think of Denver and they don't think of Colorado as the fourth largest growing city in America and what we have going on here. And I think that DC really needs to recognize the value of what we've got going here, where we're headed, and that's with the support of our neighbors. And all of our programs need to be inclusive, and they need to think west, and they need to think about places like Denver, where they have not historically been thinking when they think about connecting urban youth. They think about Chicago. They think about Philadelphia. They don't think about Denver, Colorado. And I think that's an important message. I think the bison issue is a major concern right now. Ken and Charlie and Melody are here as well, but it is a major concern. We've now been working for almost 1 year on it, and we have made very minimal progress. And I hate to say that to an audience, but we are still at the point of, I believe it's step 3 in the process of 24 that was outlined to us almost a year later. So I'm very hopeful that we can start to accelerate this process, but we really need decisions in the next month or two, or else our next roundup in November becomes a big challenge for us. So it is still one of our largest issues.
So that's the bigger issue you want us to carry with us as we go back. We understand it. We don't want that bias and herd to get to the point where you're euthanizing animals. It would be a shame to have that happen, especially after all of the testing and showing that there's nothing wrong with those animals.
Right.
That they could go to a beneficial use and benefit the refuge as well as the community. So we'll carry that message as we go back, and we see Cynthia. Cynthia's who we'll be meeting with while we're out there.
Great.
I've met with her the last couple of times we've been out there. I get along great with her, and she does listen. So we want to carry those messages back. Before we were pushing for some temporary housing. I don't know if that's still an interest for the refuge, for when you bring labor forces out there to do trails, whatever. Is there any effort that you want us to carry back on the temporary housing piece?
Well, to me, I think the larger issue from a public policy, from a citizen's perspective, is I think there's 3 things that need to take place at the Arsenal. One is that we need to recharacterize the site, and I believe that work is going to be ongoing. This is what we've talked about. Everybody needs to agree upon that the cleanup was completed, and the cleanup was completed in a successful manner, and that we're past that step. I always say that the second step is myth busting. What are these myths? What are these preconceived notions that people throw out there? That place is so contaminated. That place is the most contaminated place ever. Why would you want to go there? We need to do some myth busting, because those things aren't true anymore. And then the third thing after that is, once you understand the condition of the site and you bust all those myths, what restrictions should be on that property and what restrictions should be on the western tier? To me, science informs decisions, not rhetoric and not emotion. So what is the science? Let's get to those facts, and then let's make up whatever really does make sense for the Arsenal and our neighbors. So if temporary housing if there is indeed a need for restriction, then it should be restricted. However, I feel like once you go through this process, you would quickly find out that the cleanup was done to the satisfaction of all the regulatory agencies. The cleanup was done in a good manner, in good faith, and that those restrictions probably should not be there, and that this land should be treated as it should be. And if we wanted to bring folks out, whether one of the things we're talking about our CCP plan is, what about Boy Scouts camping out there again? Why should that be restricted? The site's been cleaned up, and we need to figure those things out, and we need to figure them out in the right way, which the right way is through science, the right way is through engagement with the right people. It's not about rhetoric, it's not about emotions, it's not about newspaper articles, it's not about who's got the loudest voice, it's about getting to the right answer and moving forward, because we're talking about managing these lands for the next 100 years.
Well, I really,
helpful?
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll carry that message back when we go tomorrow. The last thing I wanted to mention is, this is the first year that I actually received some complaints about, or the police department did, about coyotes around Rose Hill Elementary, which is right across the road over here, about 58th and Olive, 58th and Oneida. And I would really like to get some kind of a flyer or a program in place, interagency between the refuge and Commerce City and maybe Tri-County, that we can take that message to the schools so the parents can have that information. They're dropping their kid off, they see a coyote, and they start getting a little nervous. I guess the reports was they were seeing 2 over there, once in a while, and it was making some parents nervous, and I would really like, because we're going to live with this for 100 years or more, to make sure that we're trying to educate our community as we're living next to a wildlife refuge, so that people know what to do, whether to be scared or not, how to act, how to talk to their kids about acting, and allow some of these schools the opportunity to help educate the children. You've got Adams City High School sitting right next to the refuge, and I'd really like to engage in some kind of a proactive program that would help engage and educate our community living next to a refuge. And with that said, me and Renee were at a Rotary dinner Friday night, and had a gentleman, new resident to Commerce City. Him and his wife were sitting there, and they said, "Hey, what is that place?" And we got into a great discussion, talked about all the great things that happen out on the refuge, and encouraged them to go out and view it. And I find that most of the residents don't understand the refuge. They don't know what it is. They don't even know they can go out there. And I think some positive efforts through our school districts and communicating with our public to encourage people to go out. When people understand it, they'll be able to embrace it better. And I just don't think that we've seen enough propaganda promoting the refuge within our local community that we could see. And I would, maybe that's an effort that the Friends of the Front Range can promote. And I'm kind of poking on my buddy next door. But I really think that we need some positive propaganda, get people to understand it. And if they understand it, they'll have a better opportunity to embrace it.
I'll commit to working with, is it Jim and Mr. McBroom on setting up something to try to figure out on the coyotes? Okay.
That'd be great.
And then I do feel that the master plan that we are looking at is trying to really address connecting all our neighborhoods and focusing on, that gap, because we know that gap exists, and how we best remedy that. How are we hitting folks and getting 300,000 visitors, but yet some of the folks who live right next door don't know?
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and I'm there to help you to try to promote that, as being on the Friends of the Front Range for several years, and with Renee being on there, we want people to have those facts. And right now we have people that are still scared, they don't understand, and I think we need to work on getting those facts out, engaging our school districts more.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's some of what I was mentioning about being inclusive versus exclusive back in D.C., the way the programs are generated. Let's not forget the folks that live right next door when we come up with these broad sweeping initiatives.
It's frustrating. We watch Denver bus their kids in from the schools, and our own schools here locally that are across the street don't take advantage of the opportunity, and that is frustrating. And I know we have a school board member in here now, so he's hearing the conversation, and hopefully we can encourage and get the schools to promote and participate in the refuge to help do away with some of those rumors that are out there.
Yes, sir.
So I really appreciate you coming in, Dave. I would ask the council if they have any comments or questions for you. Mr. McElvany, I know your light's still on. Did you have anything?
I think the mayor covered so much of what I would have touched on. I think the last piece, though, in terms of getting the word out, and you put it so well in terms of the myth-busting that needs to occur, and really calling attention to this gem that sits in the middle of our community. I encounter neighbors regularly who don't necessarily understand. They know, or they find out late that we have a perimeter trail, but that's the extent of their knowledge of really what's out there. And so getting folks out there, whether it's to the fishing derby or some sort of entry-level event to expose them to the refuge has been huge. It's amazing. My folks have a neighbor who is, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those was his photographs. I know he's out there all the time photographing, and so there's a huge community of people that do know and are out there regularly. But I think the idea of having both of our school districts revisit, understand, come to a new sense of what this opportunity is. I know neither of our school districts do as much as they would like to do in terms of science and nature, and so here's a phenomenal opportunity to go not much farther than the school on an exceptional excursion into nature. And I really would love to see what we could do in partnership to help make full advantage of those opportunities.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Douglas?
Thanks, Dave, for giving us an update on the wildlife refuge. Could you explain to folks out there about the prairie dog hunter, the Blackfoot ferret?
Oh. Okay, so again, the black-footed ferret is the most endangered mammal in North America. We feel that the Rocky Mountain Arsenal offers two things. Number one, we have prairie dogs. They need prairie dog colonies to exist. Number two, again, the Arsenal offers an outstanding opportunity to educate people on prairie species, the plight of the endangered black-footed ferret, and our recovery efforts. Some of the things that we are talking about, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we currently have what's called the captive breeding program at the National Black-Footed Ferret Conservation Center just outside of Fort Collins. That's where the original 11, well, initially the animal was thought to be extinct, and a rancher up in Wyoming, his dog came home with one in its mouth, and they discovered that there was one more population left. So they captured that one more population and they started breeding them. So those animals were taken to zoos initially, and then we constructed this place outside of Fort Collins where we breed the animals every year. One of the challenges is those same animals have been breeding in captivity. So one of the principal goals of the Black-Footed Ferret program at the Arsenal would be some natural selection. Putting ferrets on the ground, seeing which ones are smart enough to survive and which ones aren't. And then recapturing some of those animals and putting those back into the breeding facilities. So that is one of the principal goals. We don't feel that there will ever be a truly viable population of black-footed ferrets on the Arsenal. It's not quite large enough. There's a lot of constraints around us, but it can offer a great deal to the program in the fact that we can allow some natural selection to occur on a pretty controlled site where we can go out and monitor those animals and capture those animals and get those back into the breeding population, but also where we can educate a whole lot of people. And our regional director would also like for us to have a live ferret exhibit at the Arsenal. Haven't determined exactly what makes the most sense for that, but we would assume somewhere in the visitor center where we have prairie dogs. So it would be an outdoor facility where you could come out and actually see the ferrets in action. And to us, they're remarkably cute, first off. They're a pretty connecting animal. People fall in love with them quickly. So if people will start to enjoy those animals, then that helps with the entire program. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Mr. Douglas?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Teeter.
Thank you, Dave, for coming out tonight with your presentation. Remember, in July, we're going to be having the World Lacrosse Championship here, and that should be a great time for you to hopefully get the word out to these people that are going to be here that refuge is going to be right next door, and can be one of the things that they can look at while they're in town, very close between games or whatever. I don't know how you got Charlie and Kim to show up tonight and be so late, but I'm not sure it's getting close.
It's past all our bedtime. Yeah. No, the World Lacrosse Championship's an awesome opportunity. My wife's college roommate is actually coming to town with her kids for that. So that's and she went to school up in New York. So that's the span of, there's tons and tons of people coming. So that's pretty exciting. I agree. And they're going to have a lot of downtime. So hopefully we can get them out.
Okay, Mr. Bullock.
I just want to thank you, David, for coming in and letting everybody know that if they have questions, they should be asking me, why did you do that? I didn't want all those questions, but I am so glad you explained about the black-footed ferret, because I'm thinking if it is introduced back on the Arsenal, one of our problems will be taken care of real quick, because the prairie dog community will be cut in half, and a lot of the people that are saying that they're encroaching upon lawns and parks and everything, they won't be saying that anymore, because that ferret, it will take care of the problem within a year or so. And I'm just wondering how we're going to keep them on the Arsenal. Explain to them this is as far as you can go and everything. But
well, it is almost guaranteed they will leave.
yes. But thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Renee.
Seeing no one else, I do think it's appropriate, since Ken and Charlie were here all night, that give them an opportunity to come up. I would like them, since we're in a venue where we have people at home watching on TV, to talk about how the cap and cover's working and how the monitoring is, and reassuring the public that things are monitored and in good shape out there at the refuge when it comes to the hazardous materials that are covered. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Charlie. I couldn't leave you to sit here all night and not bring you up.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I appreciate you having me up. But just want to reassure you and the citizens of Commerce City that operations are going well at the Arsenal. Our 2 landfills and 2 cover areas are doing quite well. We have 5 groundwater treatment plants, and they're doing their job. Plumes are shrinking. And we have a lot of good information that we could present to the council or citizens at any time. Good news is we are approaching the evaluation time for our cover systems. In 2015, we expect to do what EPA refers to as a operational and functional determination. And that's a final certification, if you will, that those facilities are operating as designed. And we feel we have the data to demonstrate that now, but that process will take place over the next year or so. Our 2 landfills are operating as designed. We are taking the leachate, the liquid that's squeezed out of the waste that's put in those landfills, we're taking that off-site for treatment, and the amount of leachate that we're collecting over time is decreasing as expected. By those caps on top of the landfills keeping any moisture from going into the waste, we are decreasing the amount of liquid that can come out of that waste. So we're seeing the quantities go down as expected, so those facilities are working as designed. And as I mentioned with our groundwater treatment plants, in some cases those facilities have been operating for 30 plus years. And so we're really seeing those do the job as we expected them to do. So,
really appreciate it, and you know, it's just there are still people that are misinformed, and I want to make sure that everybody gets the proper information. And if people come our direction, we can send them to Tri-County or to you, and help get that information out so that they have the facts. If there was a problem, we know that we would know there's a problem, but right now, we know that things are happening the way they're supposed to out there. So does anybody have any comments or questions for Charlie while he's at the podium? And then I'll give Ken a chance. No? Thanks, Charlie.
You bet. Thanks, Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I want to take an opportunity, and again, I'm Ken Conwright with Tri-County Health Department, and I want to introduce Melody Mascarinas, who is the field supervisor for Tri-County for the Rocky Mountain Arsenal program, and also our deputy director for the department, Tom Butts, is here tonight. And this is an important program for Tri-County Health Department, and we want to go to whatever it takes to assure citizens of Commerce City and joining communities that the remedy is protective. And we work this every day to make sure that it is. And we appreciate council's efforts and support along the way in this whole process. It's, again, if there's anything we can do for you all, we appreciate what you're going to do when you go to D.C. You have over the years, and I think that's taken this a long ways. Melody, again, is highly involved in some of the issues that you addressed, Mr. Mayor, the bison program on the Arsenal, as well as the land use restrictions and whatever as it applies not only to the refuge itself, but also to the property in the western tier parcel.
Great.
Thank you.
We've been involved with the comprehensive plan that Fish and Wildlife's been working on. Tri-County's been involved in that effort also, getting the word out there about the Arsenal, and to the school districts has been something we've been talking about during that effort.
Great. We really appreciate it. And you know, we want to make sure we get the information out to both of our districts. We got 27J and 14. And a lot of the residents that live up north that abut the Arsenal, their kids go to 27J, and then the kids that go to the schools that abut the Arsenal are 14. And it's important that we try to work with all the parts of our community to try to get the information out. And I just think the more information they have, the more contact information, if someone has a question, to where they can contact Tri-County and get the factual documentation so that they know what's out there, and so that we can encourage people to take advantage of the benefit that they have right next door, and to try to alleviate some of the things they're scared of that actually took place on there years ago. So I want to thank both of you for coming in tonight, and I know I'll see you probably at the next area boards meeting. But I wanted to offer to the council if they had any comments or questions for Tri-County as to anything that's going on at the Arsenal or the processes. And I don't see any, but it was important that you got up and were able to address some of the residents at home as well as the residents that were here. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just two things that you touched on were the coyotes and prairie dogs, and certainly plague is something that we are experienced with. We deal with that not as much as we used to because it's not as prevalent as it once was along the front range of Colorado, but we are the experts on plague in the area as far as human contact goes. And as far as the coyotes go, certainly if the city manager's office, we can get together and help out with that and get things going in the right direction to educate folks on what they need to do.
Well, and I appreciate that. You know, I'm an avid hunter and I'm out all the time, and I've noticed that this year I've seen a big decrease in certain areas for the coyote population, and my uncle has a 100-acre ranch that he raises, some baby goats and sheep and stuff, and they just got through with their birthing time, and usually this is the time of year he calls me and says, "Oh my God, there's coyotes in my yard every night. They're coming in here, they're getting all these babies, and it's a problem." I talked to him yesterday, and they've already went through their cycle, and he said, "Haven't seen a coyote," and he said all the prairie dogs are gone. I don't know if there was some plague issues throughout Weld County and certain areas, maybe not at the Arsenal, but he told me he thought that, the plague came in and wiped out a bunch of the prairie dogs, affecting some of the coyotes and natural progression of slowing some of those animal species in population. And I don't know if that's the case, that you guys see some plague throughout some of the areas this year?
We haven't seen any plague yet this year, as far as I know.
No, for 2013?
In Adams, Arapahoe, or Douglas County.
Okay.
So far this year, but
okay.
That's not to say it won't occur, because
Sure.
it will eventually.
Right. Oh, I agree. It used to be, what'd you say, every 5 years?
About every 5 years
out on
was
the
a cycle
Arsenal?
for many years in the 70s into the early 80s, but it's
Right.
really hasn't
Since
been that way.
85, you told me, I think, is the last
Right.
time we had the plague out on the refuge.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming in.
Yeah.
Look
Thank
forward
you,
to seeing you.
and
at
please
future meetings.
contact us anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Take care. Now we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, which is administrative council business. I have one item I need to take care of. Several of us are going to be out of town, including myself and the mayor pro tem. I need to make an appointment for acting mayor for the next week. It would be through tomorrow through Sunday, and I would recommend that we have Mr. McEldowney, since he will not be joining us in Washington, be afforded the opportunity to be the acting mayor while we're gone. If that's acceptable to you, Mr. McEldowney, I would ask for a motion for that to happen. Mr. Amador.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to allow Mr. McEldowney to be the acting mayor from tomorrow through Sunday. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Mr. McEldowney, take care of things. Don't burn nothing down and don't spend any money. All right? All right. Yeah, and Crystal, you keep an eye on him. All right, good. We got that out of the way. Now, is there any other administrative council business to take care of? Mr. Bullock?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've been requested by numerous patrons of the rec center to bring forth to the council to have a study to see if the rec center can be opened at 8 o'clock on Sundays, as the hours duplicate the same ones that are on Saturday. Just a lot of people say 12 o'clock is just, from 12 to 5:30 is just too limiting of a time. And so they would like to see what it would take for the rec center to open up at 8 o'clock on Sundays also. And when I say numerous people, I mean numerous people, and even Mr. Douglas has received requests, Mr. Amador, Ms. Elliott. So I don't know what the process is. Is it something that we just take the staff to see how it would be arranged or what it would take to happen?
Well, I think first off, we need to talk to staff and find out what the O&M is going to be by extending those hours and what's been budgeted for 2014 to allow for that operation to occur because of the employment base. And I'd really like the staff to kind of vet that out, come back to us in a study session and talk to us about how we can proceed to open the rec center earlier on Sundays so that our patrons have that opportunity. But I really want to throw that back in staff's lap to bring back some numbers and see how that's going to affect our budget and make sure that we can make it happen without causing too much of a rift. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Council could either take an action to direct us to do that, or seeing no objection from council, we'd be happy to pursue it.
Mr. Bullock, do you want the council to take an action?
Is there any objection from council? If there is no objection, then it's one of the things that the staff can just proceed forward with.
Okay, great. I have Councilwoman Carson. Do you have comments on the rec center opening early, or is this something totally different? Is there anyone who has any comments or would like to talk about Renee's request, or are we past that and we can move on to the next item? All right, Councilwoman Carson, go ahead.
This is just a follow-up when I wanted to make a comment on the consent agenda. I just wanted to make a comment on Resolution 2014-22, and that was appointing new members to the Youth Commission. I didn't want it just to get lost in the hubbub of the consent agenda, and I wanted to say congratulations and welcome. We will have 7 new youth commissioners. So congratulations.
I agree. Congratulations to those new members. And from my understanding, there will be some attending the NLC conference with some of the council members here next week. Five youth commission members will be going out to D.C. To engage in the conference and to participate with the local government, which I think is great. I'm interested to see how that comes back.
I do believe they will come in front of council with a report.
Good. I would hope so. I will be out there myself, and the city manager will be out there only for this Tuesday through Friday. We're going to go out and do the lobbying piece, and some of the other council members will be going out towards the end of the week, and some will be staying past the lobbying piece to attend the conference this year. I'm not attending the conference this year just because I've been under the weather. I've had pneumonia, and I want to go do my job, but I'm going to default to the rest of the council, bring back information from the conference, and I look forward to the update from the Youth Commission because I won't be there while they're there to engage. So I look forward to seeing how that turns out, since this is the first year in a while since we've engaged the youth in our delegation process out in Washington. So I do look forward to that. Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you. I just, out of curiosity, and I don't know if this will be published in a separate press piece, but of the 7 members, just a background on what school they represent, what part of our community they're coming from, because I think that's obviously one of the things that was ironic with the makeup historically, is that we had a disproportionate amount of attendees from 27J, if I remember right, versus 14, and so I'm eager to see how the balance of representation looks, and I think that's just a neat thing for the community to have an insight into, and where these kids are coming from, and so that we can also help share that kids are.
It's been our recommendation that we do something a little more forefront and bring the commissioners out in front of the public and the council.
Good.
Maybe even for a swearing-in night or something.
I'd be lovely,
but to where they can introduce themselves to the council and to the community.
Awesome.
And where they're coming from. I agree with you.
That's a great idea. I love that.
You will be surprised by the diversification of this new youth commissioners that we have. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Great. Mr. Douglas.
I have a request from council if they're okay with me meeting Congresswoman Janice Hahn from the 44th District of California. Basically, it's just a friend of ours, and Jason knows her as well, Katie Yates, it's her mom, and just basically stop by her office and saying hi, and no formal business as far as anything that we're doing or proposing anything. Strictly, it's just stopping and say hi. If anybody has any issues with that, please let me know, and so I can just move forward with this, if that's okay with the council.
Yeah, Mr. Douglas, I'm glad I had the chance to talk to you a little bit before the meeting about it. After seeing the email, I was concerned that maybe there was some agenda involved. And if it's a matter of just stopping and saying hello, fine. But if there's any council member that has an agenda to talk to a representative or a senator while we're in Washington, that would have to do with any form of business conveyed by Commerce City or in your official capacity, that would have to be something that would have to come before this council to be approved. And after talking with you, if it's just to say hello and there's no agenda attached to that, then I don't have a problem with it. But I think we need to be sure that, when you say hello, that's fine. If there's an agenda, it's important that we know before we go out, because and I trust you that it's just to say hello, but I'm saying this for the whole council, that as a council, when we go out to Washington, D.C. to do business, we carry a message unified as a council, and we don't, I may stop off and say hello to someone from Wyoming or something. We used to walk in, me and Rocky would walk across the hall from, I forget which office it was, but there was a Wyoming senator there that always had the best beef jerky on his desk, and so we'd always go over there and say hi and steal a piece of jerky. But I wouldn't want someone thinking that I was going in there with an agenda to try to get him to take a position that I have personally, and I think that that's important to come across. And so, Bob, you don't see any problems with Mr. Douglas stopping off and saying hi and taking a few pictures with somebody, as long as there's no agenda, do you?
Right. You explained it very well. Councilman Douglas and I discussed this before this meeting this evening, and his purpose is strictly social, and he's not there's not even going to be the perception that he is saying anything or representing the city council, and that's the key. So that's perfectly fine.
Does anybody else have a problem with Mr. Douglas saying hi? I think it's okay as long as there's no agenda.
I think you should say more than just hi.
Councilwoman Carson?
I truly don't have a problem with you saying hi, telling them you're from Commerce City. I did question the email because in there it's a request that city staff sends out a bio on you. That I'm not sure that I'm in support of taking staff time to send our bios.
It's just a request, let them know that I am a city council member, and strictly that's all.
Okay.
Mr. McEldowney.
I just think this is a great example of what is, at the end of the day, a fairly small issue, but because of the poor approach and not setting it up as it's now been stated tonight, it creates suspicion, unnecessary suspicion and unnecessary time that it could have been a non-issue all along. So I would just say that for anything like this, right, I think we all need to remember to be heads up, and we are a team. This is not an individual sport, and we need to keep our peers apprised of what we're doing and why, so that there is no opportunity to create a false perception. So to have it to do over again, my suggestion would have been to bring it first thing first to a meeting in this context, or even at the end of a study session to say, hey, I would like to do X, everybody cool? And then there's no issue, and then it's a matter of just going to staff. And I think that way it's a non-issue. And I think that was where I think we were all sort of caught unawares in the way that it came across, and there was really no context within the message, so we're left to wonder why. And with your answer, it makes perfect sense.
And I did do that. It's just that it was after a study session. This just happened a few days ago.
Right.
And I was asked to clarify that. So I didn't think it was a problem, but
Well, I'm glad you came and clarified it, because everybody kind of goes, and even myself, you see that, hey, why does Steve want to meet with someone from California? And so, not to discredit you, Steve, but I would tell you that if you want to go by and say hi on your own, that's fine while we're out there. If you want someone to go along with you, I'd be glad to go along and say hello as well. And if it's someone that lives in our community and this is their mom, I think it's great to make those kind of communications, and I'm there to support you. Okay? All right, any further administrative council business? Mr. McEldowney, your lights on? No? All right, Councilwoman Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of two things. I had sent an email to council. This is a follow-up to my initial request in regards to the Edu Expo that's scheduled to be held on April 12th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the high school. And what the Edu Expo is basically the higher level of education, more prominent to those who are unaware of the programs that are out there and available to them. So last year was the inaugural year, and it was very well attended. We were approached, and I will defer to City Manager McBroom, the sponsorship for breakfast. They're looking to increase that because the attendees last year, they're looking to increase that just based on attendance of last year. So my question and my request is that, again, as stated in the email that I sent to you, would be the donation of $150 from the legislative budget to help sponsor this continental breakfast.
Is there a motion to approve the request?
And Brian, I would just defer to you as far as what the process is for this.
Do you need the council to vote on that, or can it be done administratively?
I think it would be appropriate for council to vote on it if it was your desire to have us use money from the legislative budget to help cover the sponsorship. We're able to cover some of it out of the city manager's budget, but if it's up closer to that $5,000 mark, it'd be helpful to have some additional funds through the legislative budget. And it would be best if city council take that action.
Okay.
And I think Ms. Elliott's suggestion is $150 per council member from
correct.
Discretionary funds.
Yes.
$150 per council member out of our discretionary funds. Mr. McEldowney.
I'm open to make a motion. I just had a quick question. Is this open to students around the community, or is this a District 14 focused event?
No, it's around the community,
Awesome.
surrounding community.
Great. Then I would move that we authorize the $150 per council member from the legislative budget / discretionary funds to help with the funding requested.
Okay, Mr. Douglas? Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Bullock, you had your light on?
Yes, my only discussion is, in your email to us, that they put that it wasn't included in the budget for 2014 because it was uncertain if the expo was going to be continued. If you're on this committee, it is easier to put stuff in the budget and then take it out than not put it in and be short on the budget. So please tell them next year, make this an annual budget thing, and if they decide to ever cancel the breakfast, then it's just money they don't use that can be rolled over or whatever they want to do with it. But I don't know why there's short-sightedness. It just kind of irritated me that the fact that they did not put this in the budget for something that was such a successful event last year, and it had legs to move on to this year. And I heard everybody talking about how there was going to be a second one, but then, but that's my only comment. But I'm going to vote for it anyway because I feel it's a very worthwhile endeavor.
Let me just add to that, and I realize the same thing, I questioned that as well, but I think with the matter of that, we weren't certain that they were actually going to approach the city once again to sponsor that breakfast. So next time moving forward, I know Michelle Halstead has been more involved in the meetings than I have been able to, so I think that's something we can definitely, address for future use. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have one other topic.
Oh, let's finish this one up first, because I got a motion
Oh,
and
I'm
a second
sorry.
on the
Yes, go
floor.
ahead. Sorry.
We have to finish the discussion. Councilwoman Carson, you have discussion?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this request would be better if it was put through the foundation? Year
Quality
after year,
community?
or-
I don't know as though it's a nonprofit organization that can make that request, is it, Crystal?
It's a
Then-
nonprofit.
Then maybe they should
And-
pursue the
And that's something I
quality.
hadn't considered, but that's
Yeah,
definitely
the Quality
something
Community Initiative would be
I'll
a
inquire.
venue.
Mhm.
Yeah, for next year. Yeah, for next year, not
No,
this year.
yeah,
We
ne-
just gave out the
definitely
checks
next
this
year.
year.
Well,
Good idea, Councilwoman Carson.
maybe I should defer to Michelle Halstead and City Manager McBroom. My understanding that it was, but maybe I need some clarification on that.
We're not sure, but we can certainly follow
Okay,
up with those
okay.
folks, and if it is, encourage them to apply next year through the QCF grant cycle.
Okay.
Well, and as of right now, we've got a motion and a second on the floor to allow $150 from each council member's reserve to go to help pay for this breakfast, correct?
Correct.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Councilman Elliott, you have your money for your breakfast. Please let
I
us know
believe
how
I
it
do.
goes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support in this.
Okay.
I really do.
Now, you still have the floor for your
Okay.
second item.
So second matter, this was recently brought up in our retreat committee meeting that we held last week, and this was actually brought up by Councilmember Bullock. And my intent is just to suggest to council that special consideration as far as, the meetings that we normally have on the fifth Monday there are no meetings. And so with the fact that we lose a few Mondays in January, February, and then also in consideration of the weeks of NLC, which of course next week is a prime example, both in March and November, my suggestion is that we consider maybe holding a meeting on that fifth Monday. Given the fact that we have a lot of the projects that we have going on, staff has got a heavy workload, and so it's just a suggestion. It wouldn't be a matter of, it's just a matter of March, June, September, and December with the consideration of the Christmas holidays. I don't know specifically if I would suggest a formal council meeting, maybe more so of a study session, and I will defer to Deputy City Manager Hayes. This was something that just briefly we talked about, but I thought I'd at least bring it to council for consideration from a staff perspective, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know that it's a scramble to get all the agenda items that we have currently, and then they're going to be increasing as time goes on. Maybe give us a little more time to process these discussions in a timely manner and not try to fill so many agenda items in one meeting. Also, though, staff and council is pretty used to not having a meeting on that fifth Monday. So this is just merely a suggestion. I would like just special consideration, open for discussion, and I guess we just go from there.
Councilwoman Elliott, if I can, I don't disagree with you. If the staff needs an extra meeting because we have a heavy workload one month and there's only one council meeting or one study session, and they have information that they need to visit with us about or decisions that we need to make, I would hope that the council or that our staff would come to us and recommend, hey, we've got a pretty heavy workload. Can we utilize this fifth Monday of the month? And I think that I would kind of put that on an as-needed basis, have staff come to the council and request that we have that meeting, or if there's a need to call for a special meeting because the workload or the agenda is heavy enough that I could call for a special meeting, whether it be on a Wednesday or a fifth Monday or what have you. But I would lean on the staff to engage us and let us know that, hey, we've got too much stuff to get through in the council meeting that we have because we're down a council meeting, and have staff engage us, and we can make appropriate measures to either call a special meeting or to hold meeting on a fifth Monday, and I think that with communications on the staff end, we can make that work. Is that acceptable to you on staff, to be able to inform us of when you have that need?
It is, and we do operate in that fashion, although I believe the intent of the retreat planning committee was to use those fifth Mondays when they occur for sort of special study sessions to discuss some retreat-type topics in a study session format as an alternative to holding a planning retreat this winter. Is that a fair characterization?
All right, that makes more sense to me, and I'm open to doing that. I think it's just a scheduling process with staff to get that scheduled. It's kind of like the legislative meetings we've been having with Michelle and the legislative committee prior to our city council meetings and study sessions. That if we can consume some time and get through some workload by utilizing those fifth Mondays for retreat purposes to alleviate the need for a retreat, I think that's totally acceptable. But I think that just comes down to some staff direction as to the fact that we need to utilize those days and to put an agenda together and say, hey, it's the fifth Monday. Don't forget, we're going to be doing some retreat planning, and you send that out as a separate agenda topic. I don't think that it's necessary that we just say block out all fifth Mondays. Just organize it through the staff, and I think that we can make that happen without too much headache. Would you think that that's okay? You can work with that?
Given that it's a fairly significant change to the council meeting schedule for 2014, it might be reasonable to have the council take that action, that, yes, they'd like us to move forward with that.
That's fine.
The first one would be coming up March 31st, so we'll work with the retreat planning committee to select the topics for that meeting.
Okay.
I don't know how many there are in
Well, we'll go ahead and
2014.
we'll go ahead and take a motion in a second and vote on it, and that way it's done. Before we move to that point, I would call on Councilman McEldowney.
I think the points that I was going to get to, we got raised here. When we think about the calendar, we ended up with, 35 effectively, not quite 40 days a year. So if you think about 365 calendar days, 52 weeks in a year, ultimately we actually are able to conduct business about 35 or less, roughly 35 times a year. And so that, when we try and figure out how much business this city has, it really kind of puts it into context on how valuable that time is. And so those fifth Mondays become a very valuable tool. And obviously the idea of using them to have more in-depth study discussion on retreat-related items was one of those keys. The ability, as the mayor suggested, to utilize those as a substitute for meeting time that has been lost if we were to need to have a regular meeting or otherwise should certainly be there as well. I think we kind of laughed that this was a policy that was put in place a very, very long time ago with a very different pace of operations in this city. And so for a city of our current size and our future size, we have to think differently about the amount of work we have to put into to getting that business done. So I think Crystal touched on a couple of the key points from a staff perspective. Staff trying to cram as much as they might need to cram into those available meetings makes their job more difficult. And if we can give them a little bit of latitude to help spread that out and give ourselves the benefit of having those opportunities to dive deep, I think it's to all of our benefits. So I'm prepared to make a motion that we adopt this as a practice at least for this calendar year, and that we revisit based on its success.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Amador?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to allow for the fifth Mondays to be used for retreat planning discussions for the year of 2014. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. So you can start scheduling our fifth Mondays. We have missed quite a few council meetings in the last couple of months just because of holidays, and you get in this time of year, Martin Luther King Day, there's a whole bunch of them that just kind of all run together, and you go, wow, it's been like 3 weeks since I've had a council meeting.
Yep.
And you start going through withdrawals, I guess. All right, is there any further administrative council business to come before the council? Seeing none, we'll go to reports. Mr. City Manager, we can all read about yours in the City Manager's report that you put out today. Do you have anything additional?
I do want to emphasize one part of the report is actually would be desirable for City Council to take an action. The first item in the report has to do with the US 85 Planning and Environmental Linkage Study. Some of you may recall that there is a corridor study that that developed policies for access along the Highway 85 corridor from Commerce City all the way up north of Greeley. CDOT would like to update that study, and they're looking for representatives from each of the communities along the corridor. We will be having a staff person assigned to a technical working group. That'll be Darren Sterling. But they also would like each community to appoint an elected official. Now here's the catch. The meetings would occur the second Thursday of the month at 6:30 p.m., but they'll occur in Greeley. It would be ideal to have a council member willing to serve on that committee, but wanted to have council discuss that and see if somebody might be willing to serve.
Well, you would have thought they would have had it somewhere in between. I mean, it goes from Commerce City to none, and, you know, they really weighted it heavy on the north end to have the meetings in Greeley. Is there any council members that would so desire to serve on the Highway 85 access corridor? And at one time, I thought we were looking at stepping back from that because of the problems that it's caused us in the past. Because we're the southernmost community. Where are we at with that, Jim or Brian? I mean, is it a valid thing for us to do, or is it something that would behoove us to not be a part of it and to be able to be in more control of our own accesses instead of allowing Nunn and Fort Lupton and you know, Dacono, or not Dacono, but Platteville and some of these towns to be in control of whether we have an access? We just went through that problem not too long ago. And
Well,
what's more beneficial to Commerce City, to continue to participate with the corridor, or to not participate and work more with CDOT and be in control of our own accesses?
Well, it's an excellent point. Given that the current corridor study includes Commerce City, I think it's important for us to be part of the study, this update to that study. But through that process, I think it's something that we should explore. Is it beneficial for us to be included in this corridor study and bound by the policy recommendations, or after reviewing the updated policies in the study, would we prefer to not be included in it? I think we'll learn those things by being a part of this update effort.
No, I haven't had any lights lit up to have anybody want to do this. Let me ask you this, because it looks like it's going to fall kind of on me. But and I actually am very engaged with the Highway 85 access. You know, I went up and down the corridor to help get the access that we needed. With that said, it's every second Thursday. Is that what you said? Second Thursday of the month?
Second Thursday of the month, and when does it start?
Next week.
We believe it's starting next week. The other option is for council members to give it some thought and let us know.
Let me ask you this. For how long? Is this going to be all year long? Every month?
I would note that I think Mayor Ford lives the furthest north in Commerce City.
Yeah, good call, Brian, good call.
Your drive to Greeley the shortest.
Yeah, and I'll ride with Maria. Because she's going to be the staff person, right?
No, Darren.
Oh, come on. Then I'll have to ride with Darren. That's all right. Maybe we can reunite our relationship on the way there.
We think the term of the study is 18 months. So it's quite a
For how long?
18 months.
18 months.
So it's quite a long commitment.
Every month on Thursday night, I get to spend the evening in Greeley. Mr. Amador, is it something you wanted to do? I saw your light click on, and I just was wondering, because if it's something you want to do, I'd sure gladly let you do it. Otherwise, it looks like I'm it.
No, I was just wondering at what time, and I believe someone said 6:30 p.m.?
Yes. So that means you have to leave here by at least
2.
Out there early, decline, thank you.
All right, no problem. Just get me the information, and I'll plan on making those, as long as there's not a NADA at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I've got to do Greeley at 6:30 at night. That kind of screws my day up. So,
I'll back you on days you can't make it.
and Mr. Bullock said he'll back me on the days I can't make it, which may be more than not. So, you've got an alternate and a regular. How's that? And with you need council decision on that?
It's always best to have council ratify that.
All right, perfect. Do I have a motion? So moved by Mr. McEldowney. Sean's the regular, Renee's the alternate. Second from Councilwoman Elliott. All those in favor? Aye.
That's who's opposed, and we can.
Opposed? All right, so I guess you got that down.
A couple of other items in the city manager report that I think are important to point out. One is, at Mayor Ford's request, we did follow up with Waste Management to address a concern that the mayor had about being billed for a large item pickup. We've got some information, the results of Waste Management's audit related to this and related to the emails that you all received. We've reached out to Waste Management, and in the alternative of Waste Management meeting with you individually, the suggestion was perhaps to have them attend a regular meeting, give an update about the status of their services, things they're working on as an organization. They're a fairly significant vendor to the city, and it could be that if they were to appear at a regular meeting, they would address this issue. The report indicates that they found 22 accounts that were billed in error. They've indicated that they've put systems and processes in place to prevent that from happening. But that information is there for council to review. And then lastly, we do have some updated information about the I-70 reconstruction project. We had discussed with the City Council previously the Denver proposal for a second lid, as it's being called, at the I-70 and Vasquez interchange that would change access to I-70 at Vasquez. Council directed us to begin working with Denver and CDOT staff on technical solutions. We are still very actively doing that and have had some good discussions with Denver and CDOT staff. Both Denver and CDOT have expressed an interest in having some community forum type meetings, although we're certainly not opposed to getting community engagement and feedback about the second lid. We think the best approach is to continue working on technical solutions to the issues that council identified to staff. So we provided that for your benefit. We don't think community visioning meetings are necessarily going to result in solutions to the concerns that we have. And staff is committed to continuing to work towards technical solutions. So we provided that information for your benefit. And if I could now ask Mr. Hayes, we are now including weekly a capital improvements project update. There have been some significant things happening over the last week, and I'd like Mr. Hayes to take a moment and just highlight some of those things.
Thank you, Brian. I'll just be brief. The full report is attached. There's some important milestones coming up. Most notably, we released 4 RFPs to the general public last Friday. And just for everyone's benefit, is a capital projects program management, which would be for an outside firm to assist us with overall management of the entire program. Also an owner's representative for vertical construction, and this would be for the new rec center, the outdoor pool, and the existing rec center. We released the Communications and Public Information Services RFP, which will be handled through the Communications Division within the City Manager's office. And then the first project actually is out on the street now, which is for the outdoor pool, to try to meet our aggressive schedule of a summer 2015 opening. And so all those are out on the street right now. You took an important first step tonight with the ordinance on first reading for the bond issuance. That'll be coming back to you in 2 weeks. And then we are having 3 pre-submission meetings this week, the first of which for the outdoor pool is going to be on Thursday at 2 o'clock. And then we'll have a couple of events related to the owner's rep and the capital projects program manager RFP on Friday morning here in the chambers starting at 8 o'clock, and those will go back to back. And so without going into a lot more detail, there's also a couple of recreation center tours when all of you are back from Washington, D.C. One is set for Saturday the 15th, and one is set for the 22nd. I believe Carolyn Keith has all the details about that, essentially visiting a couple different rec centers per day to try to get some ideas, and we've reached out to some of our community members to participate in that as well. On March 24th, we will be coming back in a study session with an update on those 4 procurements that I mentioned, and hopefully you'll be taking action on those on April 7th, and we can get those projects going.
Thank you. Anything else, Brian? All right. How about you, Bob? Welcome back, by the way.
I just wanted to say that I don't have anything further as far as city business from the agenda is concerned, but I do want to say that coming back after vacation is never easy. Plenty of work.
It's us, Bob. You should be glad to come back. You probably shouldn't even leave anymore.
Well, I'm back, and I'm hard at it, so.
Good. And Karen did a fine job while you were gone.
Good. And Greg, too, I think.
Yep, and Greg, too.
Thank you.
All right. I'll go through my report real quick, and if council has anything to add after I'm done, that will be fine. I think it's important to let everybody know, keep your thoughts and prayers for the Chambers family. Don Chambers had passed away. Myself and Mr. Bullock went to his funeral. He was a young man at 58 years old, but Chambers and Sons served this community for many, many years as our towing contractor when we had our own impound yard. And Don and Dave both were a big integral part of the community for many, many years. So I think it's important that you know of that loss, and it was a significant loss given the fact that the efforts and the participation that the Chambers family had with the city over the years. And then Mr. Bullock, you want to, why don't you go ahead and do that one? Let you step into my report.
Also, Beth Lambert, which was one of the music makers with Commerce City Seniors, she passed away also during that time, and I went to her funeral, which was really well attended, and it's like it's one of these things that it just seems like the longer we're around, the more people we're losing. But it's just like Sean said, 2 within the same week, really 3, but I can't remember who the third one was because we had a third one that same week.
And at the Chambers, Don Chambers' funeral, I did see Bill Conway, Fidel Ortega, some of our city employees that some that are not here anymore that participated a lot with the Chambers. So it was great to be able to visit with some of those folks. It just too bad it had to be under those circumstances. So our hearts and prayers go out to the Chambers family and the Lambert family. I attended the Metro Mayor's Caucus. I also went to the Civic Center Gala, and the Civic Center Gala was for the Civic Center and Civic Center Park in Denver. I think I was the only mayor outside of Denver that was in attendance. It was myself and Michael Hancock, and I sat with Governor Hickenlooper and got to give him a piece of my mind on a few items. He did have some nice things to say about Commerce City when he gave his speech, and he came back and he told me I could pay him later. And that's a bill that if you get one at the city, don't pay it. We're not going to pay that. But it was a very good reception. We had ACED reception and World Lacrosse presentation that I went to. Attended Rotary all those weeks that in between having a report, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Bullock. We had the North Metro elected officials briefing in Thornton that I went to, and the topic of discussion was RTD and our fast track system and the new station that will be coming online and the construction process that they'll be following. The South Adams County Fire Department badge pinning ceremony. That was a great event. It's something that they hadn't done before. Now that they're having part of their department become a full-time component within our community, They did it over here at the Adams City High School auditorium. Several council members were in attendance. Had the opportunity to go up and participate and give a little speech. But kudos to the South Adams County Fire Department and the efforts that they're making with the bond money that they were given on from the residents to be able to increase their role in the community. We had Water Commission meeting, and on the Water Commission meeting, two of the two Water Board commissioners that participate in that role are term limited, and it was our last Water Commission meeting with my dad and Joanne. So we will have two new members from the Water District participating on the Water Commission meeting, and I from the folks that were there, because they had brought some of their other board members there to observe, was Joanne Moss and Glenn Murray, and I believe they'll be the two new members for the Water Commission. We had the Rotary Annual Dinner that myself and Renee attended last Friday. Other than that, I did take a little bit of time off because I was not feeling well over the last couple of weeks, but I think I'm doing all right now and shouldn't have a problem with making all my meetings. Is there anyone on council that has anything they'd like to add to the reports? Mr. McEldowney?
I'll be very brief. Just a quick update on the Quality Schools Initiative. You'll recall this is an effort that is similar to our QCI effort that led to our 2K initiative this past fall. I'm sitting in representation of Commerce City in this group. We just had our most recent meeting on February 20th. We are taking a break until March 20th. In the interim, the district is going to do some work based on recommendations put forward by the committee at our most recent meeting. In effect, this committee has been looking at primarily capacity issues within the school district. I think it's no secret in terms of the amount of growth that we've seen, particularly in the northern part of our city, the southern part of the district, that has caused the district to close open enrollment. And as projections stand, the issue is just going to get worse in the next several years. So capacity is a critical issue. The other issue is operating dollars, and I won't get into the whole background of the negative factor. I think most folks on council have heard that comment previously. But the bottom line is, if you go to the 27J website, you can see a link there for the Quality Schools Initiative. You're able to go in and take a look at material from each of the meetings that we've held in terms of the data on the growth projections, the options that have been explored in terms of the quote-unquote no cost versus Cadillac options. And I hate to use that term, but sort of if we were to go out and ask for a whole lot of money in terms of bond and mill, what might that look like? How might that be programmed? Bottom line, the district is going to look at those recommendations, begin some cursory polling, and we will get back together on March 20th to see what they've heard. I would encourage you to take a look at that data for the folks that are watching, for the folks here, and get back to me with any comments, questions, or concerns that I can relay anything back to that body accordingly.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Douglas?
Yes. Just want to remind everybody about the Memorial Day Parade coming up in May. We're looking for past Grand Marshals who have served in our parade in the past. And also over the weekend I met with Bob Martinez, was Senator for Commerce City back in 1981. Reached out to him, and hopefully he can be one of the Grand Marshals. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing no more further business to come before the City Council this evening, we are adjourned. Now, we do have some more meetings to take care of. We have the Urban Renewal Authority and then some GID meetings, but I am going to allow the council to have a 5-minute break. We are on schedule, and I think we all need to step away for just a moment. Thank you all for coming.